Hi, welcome to Tuesdays with Tara. I'm Tara Bundance, and today I'm going to talk about vulnerability, responsibility, and authenticity. So, the thing I'm going to focus on the most today is sharing some practices and exercises that help us become more vulnerable with ourselves, with our relationships, with people we don't know, and just in general. Becoming more vulnerable is a really important aspect of how we build and grow in trust in our relationships. If we can't be vulnerable, then we don't allow space for others to do the same, which in turn basically creates a space where we have a hard time trusting one another. And so, if we want to trust ourselves and others, the best way to do that is by taking responsibility. And the best way to take responsibility is to be more vulnerable. So, how do we become more vulnerable and take responsibility in safe ways that are comfortable for us? Of course, that's going to be different for each and every person. The more work you do on yourself, the easier it is to take more responsibility and recognize opportunities to create more space for vulnerability. Depending on the amount of work that we've done on ourselves, whether it's through therapy or 12-step programs, anything that we can do to become more trustworthy and trusting of ourselves, of our inner voice, of our heart and our gut and our intuition, allows us to take more responsibility in situations where we in the past might not have been able to, because responsibility is all about claiming vulnerability. If I claim that I've made a mistake, or if I claim that I recognize the patterns that I'm creating that help build into negative aspects of a relationship, whether in business or partnership or friendship, relationships with my partner, anything like that, with my kid, with my parents, if I can claim recognition of my part in how patterns are created and perpetuated, then that's me taking a step towards vulnerability and recognizing that they may not decide to do the same. If I'm willing to be vulnerable, though, it opens up a space for others to do the same. And sometimes people don't. And that's okay, because that's the part of responsibility and vulnerability that is the scariest. When we can take the step towards making changes happen by taking responsibility and being vocal about it, being vulnerable towards the other person and saying, hey, I made a mistake here. I really need to let you know that I apologize for making this mistake, and I'm going to do whatever I can to not continue making this mistake moving forward. What that does is it opens up space for the other person to possibly start thinking, you know what? Maybe I've been doing something similar. Maybe there's a part of me that's contributing to this pattern. And if they can recognize it, that opens up space for the partnership or relationship to open up and grow and develop and evolve into something stronger or better. And that's really what we're looking for in relationships, right? We're just looking for opportunities to grow together as individuals and as connection with each other. And again, this could be in any relationship, you with your business, you with the job that you have, you with your partner in life, you with your children, you with your parents, you with your friends, you with just people you meet on the street. Whenever you can recognize where patterns develop that create fear or discomfort or disconnect between yourself and another, that's where things can grow and build and get stronger. So isn't that something we're all interested in? I know for me, it's been a life changer. When I started taking responsibility for my codependent behaviors and patterns, that was something that changed my life. I started recognizing where I was the common denominator in every relationship that I'd ever been in, and that's including friends and family. And so if I'm the common denominator and things kind of fall into a similar pattern in each relationship, then what is it that I can do to change that pattern, to change the way that my relationships blossom and bloom or how they end? Okay, so I'm going to share some thoughts and exercises and practices to help us develop more connection to how we can show up in vulnerable ways in our lives. So I pulled out my I Am Oracle deck and I found my vulnerable card. Okay. And then I went ahead and opened it up to the vulnerable page in my booklet. And I'm just going to read the mantra. So have this kind of going through your mind throughout this week. Have this mantra, this very simple mantra going through your mind throughout this week as you practice vulnerability and taking more responsibility for your actions and how you show up in the world. I am vulnerable and safe. I am vulnerable and safe. Say this to yourself, either out loud or in your mind. I am vulnerable and safe. Now take a deep breath. Put your hand on your heart if you wish. Breathe out. Take another deep breath. And let's say that again together. I am vulnerable and safe. This is a hard concept for some of us to really allow ourselves to accept, that I am safe in my vulnerability. So I am going to read in the booklet what it says about vulnerability. Vulnerability is powerful. It takes great courage to be vulnerable. Being vulnerable is at the core of empathy, accountability, and authenticity. We can't be authentic if we're not being vulnerable, right? Because authenticity means being honest with ourselves and then in turn being honest with others. So really recognizing that vulnerability is right at the core of empathy, accountability, and authenticity. And of course, accountability and responsibility go hand in hand. So it includes responsibility as well. Ways to show vulnerability. Tell others when they've done or said something hurtful. Share something personal with someone you wish to be close to. Reach out to someone you would like to reconnect with. Do something you aren't good at. Speak your truth. Communicate clear boundaries for yourself. Allow yourself to feel strong emotions even when others are around. Break the status quo by daring to be different. Be the first one to open up in a group or conversation. Trust your heart, gut, and intuition. Ask for help, especially if you aren't used to doing it. Be okay with saying no. We're going to come back to those in just a moment. I'm just going to finish reading this page. Are you being challenged to share a part of yourself that you have held back or kept hidden in some way? This is a great opportunity to be vulnerable. Okay, so I'm going to go back and read through a few of those ways to show vulnerability. Tell others when they've done or said something hurtful. It's not easy to let someone know that you care about or that you respect that they've said or done something hurtful. So this doesn't mean just blurting out that was hurtful necessarily. Sometimes that's what it means, but in general, this could also mean that you take a moment after something has been said or done that felt very hurtful and decide if it's necessary to tell the other person or if it's something that you might want to do some work on for yourself. So recognizing like this person said something that was hurtful, maybe it's something that I was already thinking about myself and what they said made it come to the surface more. So that's some work that I have to do. But when somebody's just saying something to be mean or hurtful on purpose, it's okay for us to say to them, look, that was really unkind. And I'm not comfortable with what you just said. What this does is it opens up the possibility for a conversation that leads to deepening a connection to that person. Now, if this person does this on a regular basis, it's also okay for you to say, look, you've been doing and saying very hurtful things towards me, and I'm not willing to allow it anymore. So if you can't stop, and if you're not willing to have a conversation with me about why this has been going on, then this is the end of our relationship. That's incredibly vulnerable. So just consider the fact that it is okay for us to speak up when something is said, especially when it's said on a regular basis that's hurtful or uncomfortable or unkind. Another one of these that pops up communicate clear boundaries for yourself. That's kind of goes hand in hand with that first one that I just said. And also speak your truth is another one that can kind of go right in line with those. Be the first to open up in a group or conversation. Now I'm going to say just a little bit about this because I've always been the person to speak up in conversations. And so people think that I'm just comfortable doing that. The thing is, I am not always comfortable doing that, but I am willing to be the first person to open up and say something because I feel confident enough in myself that even when I've said something that might make people feel a little bit uncomfortable or it was very awkward for me, it's okay for me to speak up because I feel like if nothing else, it opens the space up for more conversation. And so if you're not someone who's usually willing to do that, try doing that. Try being the first one to speak up in a conversation. It's okay if you even say like, I'd like to say something, just opening the door for the possibility that you might be the first one that's willing to say something, and then notice how everyone else seems to open up after you do. It's a huge icebreaker and it's a huge vulnerable place for people to put themselves in. And so give yourself permission to try that. Break the status quo by daring to be different. So this might look like doing something different with your hair, doing something different with your clothing, being outside and dancing around because you're out in the open in nature when everybody else feels really scared and super, super conscious about how they might look to others. Vulnerability is very difficult, especially when we're in a group, because the group hive mind forces most of us to kind of hide within ourselves. This isn't necessarily a really good thing. And so if you're willing to be the one to break the status quo, the one to break the pattern, the one to break out of the shell that causes everyone else to kind of hide and say nothing or do nothing over the top or interesting or different, be willing to try that. Be willing to be the one to do that so that others can open up with you. Allow yourself to feel strong emotions even when others are around. Now, that could be any emotions. That could be crying, in the middle of a group when somebody says something very sweet or vulnerable, and letting yourself just feel what they're saying. It could mean getting angry and just saying, no, this is not okay. It could mean laughing out loud when everybody else is holding back laughter when something funny happens. Give yourself permission to feel out loud. Just trust your intuition, trust your gut, trust your instinct to just be naturally vulnerable and feel what you're feeling and let others see it. It's okay, because when we do that, others may decide to follow. And by doing that, we're opening up opportunities for all of us to grow and evolve. So these are just a few ideas of patterns and practices that you can put into place in your daily life. Being vulnerable starts with us, starts with number one. Okay. And so if you're not used to practicing vulnerability in a group or with other people, start trying to practice vulnerability with yourself. Ask yourself certain questions. Questions like, what do I want to get out of life? How am I holding myself back? How am I letting others hold me back? Write these kinds of things down for yourself, journal about them, and really take the time to see where you feel like you might be holding yourself back in your regular life, and then start practicing doing those things out loud. The next thing to do is to practice vulnerability with someone that you're close to, someone that you trust, a very close friend, your partner, someone that you really know that it's okay and safe to practice being vulnerable. Say things that you might not have held back, say things that you might not have said in the past, but just let the other person know, look, I'm practicing vulnerability and I would like to say a few things, practice some taking responsibility, and just have a conversation about it. How do you feel about that? If the other person's not ready or uncomfortable, find someone else, because you want to start working with people who are willing to take that step with you. Making eye contact. Making eye contact with people is a very vulnerable thing to do. Doesn't mean you have to stare the person down, you know? It just means every once in a while, look into the other person's eyes. Let them know that you see them. Let them know that you're listening. And the best way to do that is to look them in the eyes. Eye contact can be very vulnerable and it can be very connecting as well. So notice that vulnerability and connection kind of go hand in hand. So this is a deepening of our connection to ourselves and to others. By being vulnerable, we allow for deeper connection. Another thing is to get out of your head. So another way to get out of your head is to take deep breaths and allow yourself to pause. And if someone starts to cut you off or speak in the pause, just say, hang on just a second. I have one more thing I want to say, and then I would love to hear what you have to say. That's vulnerable, that's responsible, and that's honest. And it allows for the connection to deepen just a little bit more. I really see that you want to say something. I absolutely am interested in what you have to say. And let me just collect my thoughts and finish what it is that I'm trying to say here before you say something. So just being honest and open and allowing others to know where you are with your emotions, with your thoughts, all are vulnerable steps that we can take. And all the things that I've named in this video are things that we can do to practice vulnerability. So take this week to honor yourself and to honor your relationship with others by practicing vulnerability. Be you out loud. Have a great day. Thanks so much for joining me on Tuesdays with Terra.